Order, order. I call Sir Lane Saxby to move the motion.
Thank you, Sir Christopher, and it is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I'd like to thank the Backbench Businesses Committee for granting this important debate today on plastic pollution in the ocean ahead of the United Nations Global Plastic Treaty second round negotiations next week. Thanks also to the Chamber Engagement Team and constituents who have responded to their survey on this important issue. As an island nation here in the UK, we see firsthand the effect of our plastic pollution washing up along our coastline. Whilst plastic has been one of the world's most valuable inventions, inappropriate waste recycling has led to a global crisis where microplastics are present in our waterways and food chains. Nearly 460 megatons of plastic were produced in 2019. This is expected to reach 1,231 megatons by 2060, a 267% increase, and plastic waste expected to see a 287% increase. As a nation, we have reacted to our increased knowledge about the effects of plastic pollution by a fantastic societal change. The use of reusable products such as coffee cups and shopping bags have really cut down on the amount of waste washing up on our shores. The carrier bag charge implemented in 2015 has reduced the use of single-use carrier bags in supermarkets by 95%, whilst the ban on straws, stirrers and cotton buds significantly reduced the number ending up in our oceans. Following the ban, the Great British Clean said that cotton bud sticks had moved out of the UK's top 10 most common beach litter items. The 2018 ban on microbeads has also limited difficult-to-clear plastics from our water. The Marine Conservation Society's Beach Watch project also found 11% less litter on our beaches in 2022 compared with 2012. There are also fantastic community efforts such as Plastic Free North Devon that work in the community to organise clean-ups, educate hospitality businesses on reducing plastic use, and especially important in tourist hotspots like North Devon, offer wooden bodyboards in place of the traditional polystyrene ones. National bodies such as Keep Britain Tidy are launching projects like their Ocean Recovery Project, which is the only UK-based trawl net recycling scheme, and since being established last year, has already recycled 100 tonnes of trawl net and rope. We are making great strides in reducing the amount of plastic we use, but also need to make it easier to recycle the plastic. For instance, the estimated 4 billion plastic bottles that are not recycled each year.
Very grateful to the Honourable Lady, A, for allowing me to give way, and B, for initiating this debate. She may be aware that World Wildlife Fund argue that it's some 8 million tonnes of plastic that get dumped every year. And whilst she rightly describes the progress that has been made in this country in particular, but also in others, does she share my view that actually what we need to see now going forward is a discussion about how we can toughen up product standards to increase the amount of plastic that can be recycled, and can give consumers more information about what plastic products, what plastics that are used in products can be recycled and which can't be.
Sir Lane Saxby.
And I thank the Honourable Gentleman for his intervention. And yes, in many ways I do agree, and I am certainly going to come on to speak far more about the global implications of actually the situation, and that whilst we are doing so much in our own island, there is so much more that we need to do. And in particular, the upcoming deposit return scheme confirmed in the Environment Improvement Plan will bring the UK in line with similar nations and recycle 90% or more of relevant containers. Alongside reducing use and recycling as much as possible, we also need to look at the hierarchy of waste and look at reusing plastic products where possible. I would ask the Minister to look at setting a target for the reusing of packaging alongside our work on recycling. By setting a target, we will be incentivising businesses to invest in reuse schemes which reduce the amount of resources required in our packaging supply chains. A recent UN report on reducing plastic pollution found that proper reuse systems could reduce plastic pollution by 30% by 2040 compared to 20% for recycling. Investing in and facilitating a reuse system would also reduce the cost of waste management and increase jobs available in the sector. Unfortunately, despite our UK efforts, plastic has been entering the ocean for decades and continues to do so.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving me and congratulate her on securing this debate. Microplastics continue to threaten our marine ecosystems, and with research showing that fishing net pollution is deadly for sharks, seabirds and seals, does the Honourable Member agree that the solution to this must be found through balancing industry productivity while increasing necessary regulations?
Elaine Saxby.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and of course it is vital that we balance the differing needs of the ocean, and fishing materials have and continue to be an issue, which is why I think some of the initiatives that are already underway to help the industry to recycle more are so vital. Because, as I was saying, that plastics have been entering the ocean literally for decades and do continue to do so. Between modern-day plastic and legacy plastic, the oldest piece of plastic that has been found is a buoy from 1966. There are indeed trillions of pieces of plastic floating in our oceans. These trillions of pieces of plastic affect our entire ocean's ecosystem at every stage, from turtles getting trapped in nets to the plastic breaking down into microplastics and slowly building up in our food chain. Whilst we do not know as much about our seas as we should, we know that plastic has negatively affected almost 700 marine species. Microplastics also slowly sink down through our oceans to settle on the ocean floor. These form plastic deserts, kill wildlife, and can be up to hundreds of kilometres across. The largest floating patch is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch, which contains over 100 million kilograms of plastic over an area 3 times the size of France. The Great Pacific Garbage Patch is the largest example of an ocean gyre, where the currents come together to bring various flotsam to a particular point. As the convergence spot of the currents from the South Pacific and the Arctic, this zone is a plastic superhighway. It only takes an average of 7 years for plastic floating in the ocean to reach the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. We know the next generation care passionately about the planet, and particularly their oceans and beaches. As a coastal MP, I know how engaged our schools are with this issue. Indeed, it often acts as an introduction to wider conservation work. Last year, I attended Greenpeace's Big Plastic Count, which almost 250,000 people took part in, including over 9,500 school students. This shows just how seriously our youngest constituents take plastic pollution. Books such as Ruby Rockpool, written by the mermaid Hannah Pearl, suggest ways that youngsters can help and bring the problems to life. But unfortunately, solutions are not as simple as in her excellent book, which heals the ocean with a sea star's power. Of course, no matter what we do domestically, this is ultimately a global issue that requires a global solution. The UK is responsible for almost 7 million square kilometres of the world's oceans, and one of our overseas territories in the South Pacific demonstrates the challenge. Henderson Island in the Pitcairn Islands is both uninhabited and thousands of miles from the nearest population centre. Despite this, it has seen an estimated 40 million pieces of plastic rubbish land on its shores. The island is home to the endangered Henderson petrel and the flightless Henderson crake, and is an important breeding ground for many other large seabirds. As we saw in the excellent Sir David Attenborough's Blue Planet 2, the impact of plastic in the oceans extends to seabirds and can lead to parents feeding their offspring plastic instead of fish. To limit the continuing impact of plastic in our oceans and food chain, we need to not only reduce how much plastic waste irresponsibly reaches our environment, but we also need to work to remove it. Fortunately, there are innovative startups such as the Ocean Cleanup, who are the only effort to remove legacy plastics from our oceans and are aiming to remove 90% of floating plastic from the ocean by 2040.
Again, as we know that tiny microfibres are entering the sea to us washing our clothes, the company Clean Air is now turning to 3D printing technology to create microplastic filters for washing machines. Does the Honourable Member agree that we must continue to use the new technologies available to develop innovative solutions to this totally environmental crisis?
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and indeed I sponsored Alberto Costa's excellent bill on this particular topic, and I think, whilst there is much work to do on microfibres, the plastics that I'm about to talk about are significantly more dramatic at this point in time in terms of the magnitude and the skills that are needed to clean up. So the Ocean Cleanup, to remove the waste from the gyre, are using a combination of computer modelling, AI, and spaceborne plastic detection to identify the densest areas of plastic to optimise cleanup. They have created a trawler-type solution which pulls a semicircular 4-metre high net system very slowly, half of walking speed, through the garbage patch into a funnel called a retention zone, which takes the plastic onto ships to be taken back to shore. This sounds very simple, but in fact is highly complex, working in the open seas of the Pacific, protecting wildlife as they have several active systems to prevent bycatch, as they remove different types and sizes of plastic pieces. As they are scaling up the system, they are reducing its cost and are currently aiming to reach the cost of €10 per kilo of plastic waste. As 80% of marine plastics are estimated to have come from land-based sources, the remaining 20% from fishing and other marine sources, they are also focused on preventing waste reach the ocean in the first place. This is predominantly from rivers, and they have identified that 1% of the world's rivers are responsible for transmitting 80% of those land-based plastics to the ocean. To prevent this plastic entering the oceans, they have developed the interceptor system, currently focused on the most polluting rivers, such as the trash fence system in the Rio Montagua in Guatemala, which currently emits approximately 20,000 megatons of plastic into the Caribbean each year, or 2% of all plastic emitted into the world's oceans annually. And this is such a key scheme for them to be working on. To achieve their aims, they need long-term dependable funding. So far, the ocean cleanup has raised over $250 million, all from private donations. They are asking the UK to become the first government to financially support them. At present, they need $37 million to fund one of their new systems per year. As a founding member of the High Ambition Coalition to End Plastic Pollution, calling for a target in the UN Global Plastics Treaty to stop plastics entering our oceans by 2040, the UK government is leading the way for a global effort to clean up our oceans and could signal a greater dedication to cleaning the Great Pacific Garbage Patch ahead of a legal obligation. The government could also help with mapping the problems around the world, such as in the Atlantic and Indian Oceans, where the UK has permanent naval bases. The UK has an excellent capability in oceanographic research and could work with the ocean cleanup to help them with the vital mapping of the gyres so that we know where to find the plastic, how much is there, what it likely consists of, where it is coming from, and so on. They have proven know-how, as the ocean cleanup were the first to fully map the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Whilst plastics has a significant impact on our wildlife, it is also affecting smaller island nations than our own. The Pacific Island nations are not just at the front line of rising sea levels, they are also amongst those most affected by the increase in plastic in our oceans. China is working hard to court the Pacific Island nations and extend its influence and power projection, but the UK still has significant interest in the region. China is one of the world's largest polluters, and the UK can strengthen its ties in the region by supporting measures to limit plastic pollution and help clean up other island nations' waters. The UN Global Plastic Treaty second round negotiations next week are another opportunity for the UK to push for positive changes to our environment as a global leader. At COP26, we secured the Glasgow Climate Pact, and at COP15 in Montreal, we pushed for global protections on biodiversity and nature protection. We need to add our voice to negotiations and secure limits on virgin plastic production and unnecessary plastic use. With the 5th largest marine estate in the world and a population dedicated to protecting our environment and wildlife, we are well placed to not only cut down on our own plastic waste, but also to lead global efforts in cleaning up our oceans. We need to remove legacy plastics whilst they are retrievable. If we wait too long, then they will have broken down into microplastics, and we will have a far harder job of removing plastic from our environment. I hope the government will not only continue to implement its Environment Improvement Plan, but lead support for projects such as the Ocean Cleanup.